The unexpected letter. It started like any other morning, sun shining, birds chirping, and me sipping coffee on my porch. Then the letter arrived. Bright white, official-looking, stamped with the HOA logo. I picked it up, curious, expecting perhaps a routine notice about landscaping or dues. Instead, my eyes widened as I read the first sentence. Your driveway must be removed within 30 days for violating HOA regulations. I blinked. My driveway? The same one I had painstakingly poured and paved last summer? The one that had cost me thousands of dollars? Surely this was a mistake. I quickly dialed the HOA office. A woman with a clipped tone answered. Yes, that's correct, she said. The driveway encroaches on what the HOA considers community property. You have 30 days to remove it, or fines will apply. Community property? My driveway is on my land, I argued, my heart racing. I have the survey and permits. You can't just... Ma'am, our decision is final. Please comply, she interrupted. The call ended abruptly. I stared at the letter, my coffee long forgotten. My mind raced. How could they legally do this? My driveway didn't encroach on any shared property. My neighbors hadn't complained, and the permits were in my name. I knew what this really was. Karen, the HOA's notorious enforcer, the one who made minor rules her personal weapon. She had a reputation for targeting homeowners who dared to make changes without her approval. And now it seemed I was next. I spent the afternoon measuring boundaries, checking my deed, and photographing my driveway from every angle. Everything proved what I already knew. The driveway was mine. But knowledge alone wouldn't stop her. I needed legal advice. I called a lawyer specializing in HOA disputes, hoping he could help me find a way to fight back. Document everything, he said. Letters, emails, photos. This isn't just about your driveway. It's about whether the HOA is overstepping its authority. If we go to court, we can expose them. That night, I sat at my desk, scanning the HOA letter into my computer. I drafted an email explaining my ownership, attaching photographs and permits. I pressed send with a sense of defiance. Karen might think she could intimidate me, but I wasn't backing down. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. Karen was about to make a decision that would backfire spectacularly, and I was ready to take her and her HOA down in court. Karen's retaliation completed. The very next morning, my phone buzzed. It was the HOA president. Mr. One, your name. We received your email. Karen insists you comply immediately. If you do not, we will begin fines and legal action. Her tone was icy. I realized then that this was no mere misunderstanding. This was personal. Karen thrived on control. The thought of a homeowner standing up to her threatened everything she valued: power, respect, and the illusion that she ruled the neighborhood. I replied calmly, citing my survey, property lines, and city permits. I mentioned my lawyer, subtly letting her know I wasn't navigating this alone. That afternoon, a crew arrived at my property under the guise of inspection. They measured my driveway, took photos, and scribbled notes. I watched from my window, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. This was intimidation, plain and simple. Karen called later that day. We're just making sure our community standards are upheld, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Your cooperation will make things easier. I've already provided proof, I replied firmly. The driveway is within my property and fully permitted. I will not remove it. Her silence hung over the line for a moment. Then finally she said, "We'll see what the court says," and hung up. Over the next few days, I meticulously gathered evidence. City permits, property surveys, emails, and photos. I even spoke with neighbors who confirmed that my driveway had been part of my property for years without any complaints. Every piece of documentation reinforced my position and exposed the HOA's overreach. Karen, however, wasn't done. Another letter arrived, this time more aggressive, threatening escalating fines and legal fees if I did not comply immediately. The tone was almost gleeful, as if she enjoyed using intimidation to get her way. I reviewed the letter with my lawyer. "This is exactly the kind of overreach that strengthens your case," he said. "Every threat they make, every unreasonable demand, will count in your favor in court. Document everything, every call, every letter, every interaction." I followed his advice. I recorded phone calls, kept emails, and even documented the crew's visit with photos and timestamps. Karen's tactics were making themselves obvious, and the court would see it. I stood my ground, calmly showing her the survey and permits. Her eyes flickered with frustration. "This isn't over," she muttered and left. That night, I felt a mix of tension and empowerment. Karen had tried every tactic to intimidate me: letters, inspections, and direct confrontation, but each move only strengthened my position. The court battle loomed ahead, but I was ready. For the first time, I realized that this was more than a driveway. It was a fight against abuse of authority, and I intended to win. Karen's retaliation had only made my case stronger, and soon, the world would see her overreach for what it truly was. The court battle begins. The morning of the court hearing, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. Karen and the HOA attorneys arrived looking confident, as if the judge would automatically side with them. I, on the other hand, carried stacks of evidence, organized neatly in binders, surveys, permits, photographs, emails, and even witness statements from supportive neighbors. The courtroom was quiet, the air heavy with anticipation. The judge entered and everyone rose. After a brief introduction, the proceedings began. Karen spoke first. "Your Honor," she said sharply, "the HOA has rules in place to protect our community. The homeowner installed a driveway encroaching on what is considered common property. We request compliance and removal." I felt a small pang of frustration, but waited patiently. When it was my turn, I stood, took a deep breath, and began. "Your Honor, I am the lawful owner of this property, including the driveway in question. I have permits from the city, property surveys, and neighbor statements confirming that my driveway does not encroach on any HOA-designated land. The HOA's claim is based on a misinterpretation of the community map, and frankly, personal vendettas rather than legal grounds." I presented my evidence methodically. The judge examined the documents, occasionally nodding. Photos showed clear boundaries. Emails highlighted repeated requests from me for clarification. Witness statements described how my driveway had been part of my property for years without complaints. Karen tried to interrupt, her voice sharp and insistent, but the judge politely reminded her to wait her turn. The tension in the room was palpable. Karen's usual confidence seemed to falter as I presented every piece of evidence with clarity and calm. My lawyer then spoke, emphasizing the HOA's overreach. "This is not just a case about a driveway. It's about the limits of HOA authority. Homeowners should not be threatened with removal of property legally theirs, especially when proper permits and documentation exist." Karen's face reddened as she shifted in her seat. Her plan to intimidate me was crumbling. The judge reviewed the evidence again, occasionally exchanging notes with the court clerk. Finally, after what felt like hours, the judge leaned forward. "After reviewing the evidence, it is clear that the homeowner's driveway is legally on private property and fully permitted. The HOA has overstepped its authority in this case. No fines shall be imposed, and the driveway shall remain. Further, the HOA is warned against retaliatory actions." A wave of relief and triumph washed over me. Karen's jaw tightened, and she muttered under her. As I left the courthouse, my lawyer clapped me on the back. "This will send a message," he said. "Next time the HOA will think twice." And indeed, for the first time in months, I felt in control again. The driveway wasn't just concrete and gravel, it was a symbol of standing up for what's right, victory and lessons learned. The days after the court ruling were surreal. News of the verdict spread quickly through the neighborhood. Karen and her HOA looked quieter than ever, no longer issuing threats or letters. It seemed that finally, reason and legality had trumped arrogance. I spent the first morning after the ruling walking along my driveway, feeling an unusual sense of pride. Every crack in the pavement, every edge perfectly lined with stones, felt like a small victory. It wasn't just about concrete. It was about standing up for what was right. Neighbors approached me cautiously at first, unsure how I would react. But soon they congratulated me warmly. One neighbor even said, "I wish someone had taken a stand sooner. It's about time someone told Karen she can't push people around." I smiled, realizing that my fight had inspired others to question authority and protect their rights. Back at home, I reflected on the battle. The court case had been intense, exhausting, and stressful, but it had also taught me invaluable lessons. Documentation mattered. Patience mattered. Staying calm in the face of intimidation mattered most of all. Karen had counted on fear and uncertainty, but preparation and evidence had won the day. The HOA, now under scrutiny, began to change its approach. Policies were reviewed, some overly strict rules were relaxed, and the board became more cautious in issuing ultimatums. I had not only protected my property, but had also sparked accountability in the HOA system. Karen predictably was not pleased. I heard whispers of her grumbling during board meetings, but her attempts to regain control were ineffective. The community had seen her overreach exposed in court. Her power had waned. I realized, too, that this experience had changed me. I was no longer just a homeowner abiding quietly by the rules. I was someone willing to stand up for fairness and justice. I had learned that confronting injustice required courage, but also strategy. and that sometimes legal authority is the ultimate equalizer. Life slowly returned to normal. I could finally enjoy mornings on my porch without the stress of letters and inspections. The driveway, intact and sturdy, was a daily reminder that I had defended my rights effectively. Friends and neighbors often asked me how I handled Karen and the HOA, and I shared my advice openly. Document everything, stay calm, and never underestimate the power of legal recourse. As I looked at my driveway one last time before heading inside, I smiled. This was more than a physical victory. It was a moral one. Karen's attempts to intimidate me had failed, and the HOA had learned a lesson they would not forget. I had proven that standing up for what's right, even against formidable opposition, was always worth it. And with that, I stepped inside, finally at peace, ready to enjoy my property and my community on my own terms, knowing that justice, when pursued with determination, always prevails.